our Tuesday lunchtime class for this week, and it's going to be a Vinyasa class. So we're going to just start seated, or you can start lying down if you'd rather, just so we can take a few moments to pause and breathe and pay attention. So if sitting is tricky, you can sit up on something, like sit up on a pillow, so it's a little more comfy. And then just get your spine aligned so that it feels like it mostly holds itself up in a neutral way. Don't hold your body too tight, too stiffly or tightly. Let yourself relax as best you can in the circumstance, so that the bones are able to just allow themselves to be where they're currently allowed to be. And then I like my eyes closed, but if that makes you kind of go into dreamy, sleepy land, you can always keep your eyes open just a little bit and just look at the floor in front of you with a gentle focus. And then pay attention as the breath comes and goes. Develop a breath pattern. You might already have one, but see if you can develop a breath pattern that lets the breath go way down, almost like it bounces off the pelvic floor. So it goes way down deep. Feel all the movement of the internal organs. And then without a strain or any kind of feeling of not getting enough air, see if you can just lengthen out the exhale a little bit. Now at the end of this exhale that you're about to or on, drop your chin, and then make sure your spine stays in its neutral position and roll your head up and over one shoulder, and then back, and up and over the other shoulder, and back. We're just going to go back and forth. And if you find a little spot that feels like, oh, it could use a little bit more assistance, you can linger through that little spot. I always have a little bit more tightness on my right side than my left because of the way that I sleep. So just give that right side a tiny bit more of a linger. Do one more little sequence. And when you're even on both sides, just come on back to the center. Once you've gotten your head floated back up, we're going to do some little circles with the shoulders. So bring them up, pull them together and around. See if you can shoot your shoulder blades all the way around towards the armpits before you bring them back together. All right, so we're going to do it the other way. So once the shoulder blades are in the center of the back, take them up and then push them forward. Or whatever is the opposite of what you were doing before. All right, so now whichever leg is on top, that's the direction that we're going to twist. So once your shoulders are back into a neutral, sit up tall, twist towards the leg on top. Sometimes it feels good to me to go out of the twist and come in, go out of the twist and come in a couple times. And then sit up a little taller. Move the shoulder blades, maybe right shoulder blade forward, left shoulder blade back, or vice versa, depending on what's in front. And then come out of your twist. Now this is the tricky part. We're going to switch which leg is in front. I'm not quite ready to twist the other way yet, so I'm going to keep doing these little rib jiggles. You can do these little baby cat cows if you like. or a little side to side with the ribs. Just kind of loosen up the back a little. All right, now it feels good. So sit up nice and tall. And again, we're gonna twist towards the leg that's on top. Now, if this doesn't work out, just put your legs back in the normal way and just twist the other direction. It'll be fine. I try to make myself do the non-habitual things from time to time, so that's what this is all about. And then I'm going to do the shoulder blades again. So this shoulder blade's in front, so this is the one I'm bringing forward, and this shoulder blade I'm going to bring into my middle back. Just gives that upper back a tiny bit more twist, and it feels good. Be kind to your lower back, though. Okay, last big breath here. And we'll unwind it. And there's a moment where it's about 30 seconds for me usually, but there's a moment where I feel everything kind of release. There's kind of, I don't know, lighter feeling in the spine, and that's the moment where I move into the next shape. So we're gonna take the legs out into a V. So when you feel that kind of sense that your spine is back to neutral, whatever it feels like to you, then take your legs out into a V, and you can bend one knee if you like, but we're gonna kind of go back and forth. So we're gonna come over one side, and then over the other side. And we'll pause in a second, but let's start with just movement. Over one side, over the other. One more time. So then this one we're gonna linger with. I'm gonna kind of press my elbow into my thigh a little bit and let myself have a little bit more rotation there. So I can access this front side muscles. If you prefer the back side, you can keep the rotation where it was. Come on back up, or, you know, change it. I'm not in your body. I don't know what's going on in there. But you feel it out, right? So there's, as you come into this, and again, I'm just gonna wait for just a second, but as you come into this other side, like there's muscle on the front half of the abdominals and muscle around the back half. And so the back half, if I lean forward a little bit, I get more into that. And if I sort of rotate my ribs a little bit more this way, then I feel more in the front. And so it's just, where is the spot that feels good to you? So now I'm gonna dig in just a little bit deeper. Take one more big breath, and then come on back. So these areas, all that area of moving around in the back, feels nice. So we're gonna come around, we're gonna get into downward facing dog. If you wanna do a few rounds of cat before you do that, you can. If there's anything else that you need to do, like you could substitute all fours if you'd rather, if down dog is not your jam. So hands about shoulder distance apart. Some of us might need a tiny bit more room, but as close to getting the bones lined up as possible. And then lift so that it feels like your shoulder blades come up around your ears, and then glide them up towards the hips. And in this case, it's technically down your back, but since you're upside down, it feels like up. Up towards your ears, and then towards the hips. So towards the ears and towards the hips. Now, see if you can draw the armpits towards each other just a little bit, create a little bit more structure across your upper back, and then hold that and get into the legs. So I usually start with just a little bit of heel movement, and then I might add some hip to that. It's up to you, you guys. Now, there's gonna come a point where you've had enough weight on your arms in downward dog. It's possible we've already passed that point. But if you get to it, you're gonna walk your hands and feet towards each other, okay? You can do it either way, whichever way works better for you. And then take a moment, if you can hang upside down, just drape. Bend your knees as much as you need to. Now, wiggle your feet out kind of wide. If you have a rectangular yoga mat about as wide as the mat, we'll probably do pretty good. And then we're gonna sway over to one side and see if the legs will go straighter. They may not. Bend the knees, sway over to the other side. See if the legs will go a little straighter. Sway around. Sway around. And then one more time. Coming back to the middle. We're gonna come up halfway and then all the way to standing. Give it a big stretch. And then give everything a little bit of a jiggle, a little bit of a shake. Shaking feels really good, y'all. You should try it. All right, so we're gonna stand up at the top of the mat. Let the shoulders relax. Find your mountain pose. And we're gonna just pause for a second with mountain pose just to feel ourselves suspended here. Shoulders relaxed, core a little engaged, legs active. I find this pose kind of vulnerable. I want to cross my arms so badly, but that's the introverted side of me. For an extrovert, this might be a quite easy pose. Take a nice big breath, reach your arms up overhead, give it a big stretch, maybe a little baby back bend. We're gonna fold forward, come up halfway. Now we're gonna step back with the left foot into a warrior one. If you would find it beneficial, you can either put your hands on the floor or put your hands on some blocks so that you can step back and kind of catch that pose before coming up. Okay. And so with warrior one, the foot is all the way on the ground here, so I'm not balancing on my toes. I don't want to try to overly bring my hip forward. I'm just gonna let the hip go with the leg. And then you can turn your rib cage a little bit more forward so that it feels like you're facing forward. And then just notice what happens. Some of us have much more rotation in the ankle or the knee, and we can get away with things that other people can't. So I just find a balance, and if it feels like you're super wobbly or you're on a tightrope, you probably are. Take your front foot and just wiggle it a little bit more to the side, and then try again. And sometimes that little bit wider base will give us that sense of balance. Now we're going to stay here and bring the elbows back behind us. Push the arms forward, then bring them back up. Bring them back. Push them forward, bring them up. One more time, we're going to bring them back. Now, as you push forward, you're going to pause right there, put your left elbow underneath, and then if you want, you can hold onto your hand or your thumb or whatever's available, and then lift the elbows up. Keep the legs steady. Take in a nice deep breath. Good. Exhale, release your arms, give them a little rinse. Now we're going to turn a little bit to the diagonal and fold forward. This is called humble warrior, bowing warrior. And then if you have blocks, this is a little bit easier to do with blocks, but you can do it just by putting your hands out in front of you. The blocks give me like a little bit of height to dip into. So then I'm going to let my arms kind of hang out with the blocks as I let my shoulders come into a little bit more of an extension. This is tricky to do in downward dog because there's weight bearing and we can cause damage to the shoulder. But done here, look, there's no weight on the arms really. It's quite nice. So one more breath. Okay, so then we're going to take this into a balance before we do the other side. So we're going to shift the weight into the right leg. You can put a block up here or even two, and then lift your back leg up. So you might be holding onto the floor, you might be holding onto blocks, you might be holding onto furniture. Let's see if we can tilt that left hip all the way up into the air. And if possible, the left arm is going to come off the floor and it might fall apart. So then you put it back together and stretch out. Falls apart, put it back together. Stretch out. It falls apart, put it back together. Oh, stretch out. Last breath here. Bring your knee in. And then we're going to step all the way back into down dog. Okay, now we did a bunch of stuff on one side, but we haven't done the other. Can you feel the difference? Oh, that's nice. Come forward into a plank. You can hold a whole plank. You can put one leg in the air, or you can hold a modified plank. One leg in the air if you want. Take a nice big breath. Exhale, we're going to lower down. Come into a back bend. I like a cobra because it makes me use my back muscles. You can do others. Come back, and we'll go into downward dog. Now that left leg is going back up. I'm going to step it forward as far as it goes. Bring the right foot up to meet it. Come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Then we're going to wiggle the feet out about that mat width. Knees bent. Sway over to one side. See if the legs want to go any straighter. Come back to the center. Sway to the other side. If the legs want to go any straighter. Come back to the middle, give it a little rinse. Halfway up. And then all the way to standing. Big stretch. Bit of a shake. And then back into our mountain pose. Now this is my favorite part, because we did mountain pose already, and got kind of a gauge of what it feels like to be in mountain pose. And then we did one side, but we haven't done the other yet. Again, you feel the difference. So take a nice big breath. Let's even things out. Reach up nice and tall. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, come up halfway. And again, you can put your hands on the floor if you like. We're going to step back with that right foot. Find warrior one. And then come on up. And again, leg, hip, and knee all working together. Rib cage might be pointing forward. Make sure it doesn't feel too wobbly. Bring the arms up. Then we're going to bring them back. Push them forward. Bring them up. Bring them back. Oh, push them forward. Bring them up. Bring them back. Push them forward. Right elbow goes on the bottom. Maybe catch hold. Lift if you can. Elbows go up. Shoulder blades come down. See if you can keep the hips with that warrior one shape. Ooh, last breath here. Release your arms. Again, we're going to come to the diagonal and fold in. Maybe using the blocks, maybe not, for a bowing warrior. You could also wrap your arms behind your back. That'd be another way to get a shoulder opener. Kind of leaning my weight into my legs quite firmly, so my upper body is very much allowed to just lightly fall into the shape. Keep this inner thigh a little bit lifted to keep your foot grounded. We're going to take a big breath, and then we're going to come on into that balancing pose. So again, maybe I need both hands today, right? So I get my right leg in the air, and maybe that's where this stops for today. Maybe I can take a hand off the floor and stretch. Maybe it falls apart, and then I put it back together and stretch. However many times it falls apart. Nice big breath. Ooh. And then we're going to put both feet on the ground, both hands on the floor, and step back into down dog. Oh. Now, notice things. Is it different than it was last time? Coming forward into plank, and maybe that opposite leg is lifted, or maybe you modify your plank, draw your navel in, create that little ski slope from your head to your knees. One more breath, and then we're going to come down. Now we're going to do a little sequence of cobras. So start with your hands about lined up with your chest. Root through the legs nice and firm. Come into a little baby cobra, as high as you can lift with just your back muscles. Come on back down, slide the hands back a bit. Lift, little baby cobra. Ooh, stretch through the legs and press them down into the ground. Yep, come on back down one more time. Little baby cobra. Ooh, now we're going to try to hold that lift and put the hands out so they look a little bit like little spider legs. I hope that doesn't trigger anybody. So we're going to take the right shoulder forward, left shoulder back, look a little to the left. Oh, come on back. Left shoulder forward, right shoulder back, look a little to the right. Yep. Right shoulder forward. Ooh. Left shoulder forward. Oh, work your legs, right shoulder forward. Left shoulder forward. Beautiful. Coming on back into child's pose. You can do down dog if that's your jam. Oh. So we're going to do one more little opening in this kind of same shoulder vein that we worked on with the humble warrior. Again, you can do this without yoga blocks. Just bring your elbows about shoulder distance apart. You're going to come forward enough that it feels like your hips come a little closer to over your knees, and then bring your elbows far enough forward that you can sort of drop the shoulders into a stretch, chest towards the floor. Now, I like to be a little bit elevated because I run out of room on the floor. So I take a couple blocks and put my elbows on the blocks. I have to sort of find the right distance here. But then elbows bent gives me a little bit more stretch in the triceps, so I dig that. I've got to bring one a little bit closer in. That'll be just about right. All right, so then I'm dropping myself so heart moves towards the floor. I've got a little bit more of a shoulder opening, and this isn't right for everybody, but if it feels okay for you, take 2 more breaths. Now to get out of it, I roll forward with my weight until I can get the arms out of there. And then we're gonna take ourselves onto our back. Now, this could turn into Shavasana at the very end, but it's not gonna be Shavasana at first. But we do want a little bit of elevation in our hips. So a yoga block can work. For me, that's a little high. So I use a folded blanket. So this blanket right now is folded 3 times, in half again, and then one more time. And I'm gonna fold it then into thirds. So what I've got is about 2 inches of blanket. Okay, that's just about right for me. It's a little squishy, but just about right, because my hip flexors are tight enough that I don't need a lot more. So we're gonna lay down on the back. We're gonna take ourselves through a little bit of a movement pattern. Have the blanket or your block, whatever you're gonna use, under your hips, close enough you can reach it. Start by snuggling your shoulders underneath your back and getting your feet nice and firm in a position that feels like a good bridge for you. If it hurts your knees, try a slightly different arrangement, okay? We're gonna scoop the tailbone, lift the hips up. I like to come up off my toes and onto my heels so I have a little bit more freedom to move. We're gonna swish the hips kind of back and forth a little bit. This makes the core do some work, and it also feels really nice. So just kind of let your heels swish around with your hips. And it may or may not work out. So now, I've got to get this blanket underneath my hips. So I'm going to grab it and put it right under there. So when I land on it, it's my sacrum, which is the little bones between my 2 pelvic bowl wings, is supported, okay? So I don't want it under my low back. I want it right under the pelvis, just below the belly button, right under the pelvis. All right, so once it's here, you get to decide which side to do first. I'm gonna let my left leg straighten out because this is my slightly kinder side, and I'll do the right side last. So then you can hold your leg like this, and then you can give yourself some little ankle work, and then just stretch out through that left leg. And that feels nice for some of us, and some of us might want to hold onto the ankle, and some of us might want to hold onto the foot. And so it's a little bit more like lunging upside down. We're gonna let this be kind of the focus. So reaching out through the left leg. Now if it feels like you need a little more room, you just need to build up a little more height, okay? And some of us might not need any height at all. You might have tight enough hip flexors, just laying on the floor is plenty. And that's okay too. Or just meet the pose wherever we are. It's about you, not about the pose. But this feels kind of nice. You can also do a little rock the baby and then go back into it. Oh. It's pretty great. Oh. All right, so we're gonna let go here, put that leg down, bring the other leg up to it, do a little windshield wipers if it feels okay. And then just pause for a second and feel the 2 hip flexor areas. And does it feel like there's a difference? So on the left side for me, that's the side that I had in the stretch, it feels kind of a pleasant, warm kind of lightness. And this, I don't have a lot of sensation here at all. So let's find out what happens if I switch. So the right leg's going straight. You might just hug in, you might hold, there might be a little rock the baby, or you might get into this kind of half happy baby shape, lunge shape, and stretch out through that right leg. It's hard for me to keep my heel on the ground here because this side is so much tighter, but it's kind of fun and worth it because it doesn't feel like too much. It feels like just the right amount of opening and space making here. If we're too aggressive, this is very high connective tissue region, and if we're too aggressive, we can tear things, and then it just puts us back even more. It's getting a little easier for me to keep my heel on the floor. We're going to take about 3 more breaths. Sometimes I stop breathing when I get into a big stretch, so notice that about yourself as well. keep that deep, smooth breath going as best you can. All right, so then we're gonna release this shape. Bring the legs back. Do a little windshield wiper if you care to. And then pause for a moment and feel. And is there a difference that you can notice? I'm gonna take this guy out from underneath my hips and just put it down lower. We're gonna bring the legs in. We're gonna take them over to the right. Now you can just pause right there. You could, if it feels better, have a little bit of structure. Put your blanket or your block underneath the bottom. You can wrap your top leg around like an eagle. And then we're gonna take this upper body and reach out through this arm and kind of roll that shoulder into the ground. Now, I'm gonna actively, with my core muscles, work my hip that direction and my shoulder this direction. So we have internal and external obliques that allow us to do these kinds of movements in two directions on the same side. So that's what we're up to. Just working the obliques. I need my arm a little bit lower. And breathe. And on the exhales, I go like a little bit more into the twist, and on the inhale, kind of let it go a little bit. So I can get that big breath. Good. One more big breath on this side. I'm gonna roll into the twist with my upper back, and then I'm gonna bring my leg to that twist and then the other. And again, this is a great opportunity to build a little bit of our powers of interoception. Just pause for a second and notice if there's any differences. So I would swear to you that my left leg is longer than my right leg now. And this side feels like it's sort of been gently kind of, all the kinks have gotten out. And on this side, it feels a little bit like a bent up pipe cleaner. Or a bent up piece of wire. So let's do the other side. I say, it would be a good idea. All right, so when you're ready, bring your knees in. You can pause for a second, do a little back massage. And then we're gonna take the legs over to the left. Again, play with this on your own, because for me, each side is different. I need slightly different support. And then I work this upper back as best I can onto the ground. And again, I'm gonna use the muscles right here on the sides of my waist to both spin my shoulder down and draw my hip around so that I'm active in this twist. Now you could do this in a more passive way, but I like the activity. Deep breaths. Okay, one more big inhale. And then we're gonna bring ourselves back to the center line. Now, this is where we're gonna do just a couple of minutes, but it could go longer. So we're gonna stretch out, see if we can feel a difference. I put this blanket right underneath the top of my thighs so that my hips relax a little more. And then snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you and let your arms relax. And we'll just pause for a couple minutes here, but you could stay after that if you want for a wee bit longer. You might be tempted to skip the relaxations, but do them anyway. breath. And then take a breath so deep you can feel it maybe all the way to your toes. Let go with a big sigh. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch out your hands and feet. Oh, give your wrist and ankles a little movement. Stretch out your whole body. Oh, and then we're gonna bring it all together, y'all. Give it a little back massage. All right, yogis. Thanks for joining me for lunchtime yoga. If you're still in Shavasana, don't go anywhere. Just stay. Namaste, yogis.